Hello, my name is Tosca Bruno van Vijvek and I direct the Transnational NGO Initiative here at the Maxwell School at Syracuse University. And we have today with us Ken Berger. He is the Managing Director and Chief Educator of a data science company, Algorithm, which is active as a startup in the social sector. We'll talk about it in a moment. And he's also the former president and CEO of Charity Navigator, and we'll talk about that too. So thanks, Ken, for allowing us to interview you today. So since we're going to talk about how you are just 2 months ago transitioned from Charity Navigator to Algorithm, we're going to talk in this brief interview about both of these organizations. So tell us briefly, what's the nature and mission of Charity Navigator for the few people who may not know that, and of Algorithm, please.
So Charity Navigator is a website, and it's the largest charity rating or NGO rating agency in the world, although it only looks at NGOs that are registered in the United States, even though they serve countries all around the world. And the purpose is to be a guide to intelligent giving. So their primary mission is to serve donors, and they do that by rating NGOs on metrics currently having to do with finance and governance, and they're also building to also measure what they call results reporting or outcome reporting by NGOs. And currently they do about 8,000 charities. They're covering about 55% of all charitable giving in the United States. And they estimate that they're influencing about $10 billion a year of charitable giving. Last year they had about 7 million visits.
Okay, so it's clearly a very influential agency, if you will. And Algorithm?
Algorithm is 2 years old, and it is a data science company, as you mentioned. And our mission is to what we call democratizing impact measurement, or in English, to help NGOs to measure what matters most in meeting their mission. So to measure outcomes, to measure the results of their work, so that they can become more effective and more focused in their ability to know that they're meeting their mission. So it's a cloud-based service where social scientists and data scientists come together, look at the research in a field of practice, in a cause area, and then say, okay, here appear to be the measures of models that work best. How does your organization do at this? Here's suggestions for ways you could do better. And also looking at this by beneficiary, and also asking the beneficiary, the people being served, what do you think about how it's going? What do you need? How is this meeting your needs? And how could the organization improve to meet your needs? And also informing the people being served as to how the organization's doing.
I see. So this is both kind of pre-program launch and design, and post, it does fulfill that function, and it does that particularly at a cost level that is affordable and from an implementation workload point of view, affordable for small and medium ones?
Yeah, so why we say democratizing impact measurement, the democratizing part is that most of the tools up till now that have been developed for NGOs have been very costly, very complex. And this organization, Algorithm, has been created specifically to bring this to the vast majority of small and mid-sized NGOs by making it low cost, affordable, and getting the benefits that large NGOs have of big data by aggregating the data from all the small NGOs so that they can learn from each other as well.
As a learning community.
Right, it's exactly what they call it, a learning community. And so a key tool that is used is a pre-program launch survey, or if it's an ongoing program, some discrete early stage of a client's entry, and then post, after the program or the service has been delivered, to see how it looks like it's going to do, and predicts based upon research from what you've answered in our pre-survey. Here's how we predict you're going to do, and we're not going to wait till the end. Here are things that you can do to make it even better before you start. Okay. So we're not going to be like scientists that sit back and wait for a control group, and a snapshot. We want to be on the ground with what are called predictions or predictive analytics and prescriptions, prescribing for you ways that you can do better from the get-go before you even start.
Interesting. I can imagine that motivated you to
Big
join
time.
them. Yeah, and this is a social enterprise?
Yes, it's a social enterprise, which is also the first time in 40 years for me, because the last time I did this, I was washing buses for my dad when I was 17. I've never been in a for-profit in 40 years.
Right, right. So what do you think let's again unpack it for both Charity Navigator, the way you left it, the state it was in, the work it was doing, the approach it was using, and Algorithm. What are some of the core challenges you think that Charity Navigator and then respectively Algorithm is facing as it's furthering its role in the social sector?
I think the biggest challenges for Charity Navigator, one is, and this is very familiar for NGOs, is resources. The company is a $1.5 million organization that aspires to rating thousands and thousands of charities on what matters most, on standards that have not even been developed, that the government doesn't even require. It's an incredibly awesome challenge. I think the other major challenge for Charity Navigator is it is an agency that makes judgments in a sector that that's not so receptive to, and so it means you're under a lot of scrutiny and criticism and attacks. So you really have to have a bit of a tough skin to do that work. Yeah. And also lawsuits too. You can have to worry about the possibility of being sued. So those are some of their big challenges: the resources and those kind of things.
And then probably the way in which the results measurement and reporting approach will continue to be developed and implemented is the other big one out there, right? Yeah,
you're basically creating you're creating a set of standards where none exist before, and it's critically important. See, because on the one hand you're under attack because of the judging, but at the same time, for the valid feedback and the valid criticisms of the NGOs and thought leaders to make sure that you're doing the right thing and developing the right standards. And so it's a very delicate balance, and it's very complex and challenging to try to be creating something that has not been there before. I mean, there are standards out there, but to have something at an almost universal level for the NGO sector has never been done, and many people think that it can't be done. I believe that it can be once you look at the specifics of how simple and basic it is what they're trying to do, but it is a major challenge.
And how is that for Algorithm, a startup in the social sector with that role of helping with measurement?
Well, having been 40 years in the NGO side, I think that even though there's a growing awareness of social enterprise being part of the fabric, there still is a tension between the two sectors. There's a tendency on the part of some social enterprises to be somewhat arrogant in thinking that the NGOs are bleeding hearts that need more business practice, and there's a tendency on the part of some of the NGOs to say you all are about profit and you really don't care about mission. So I think that's a challenge that's still very much there. So when I go out as the chief educator, people may think that all I'm about is marketing and sales. And I think the other thing for Algorithm is because it's a social enterprise, to build these systems requires seed funding. And to get seed funding that is unattached without strings attached, so you can do it truly objectively as possible, is also a challenge. Because, typically people with money that have an agenda and they want to impose something on you. So I think that's another major challenge for Algorithm. But I do think they're at a tipping point, and I think we're going to get there.
That's very interesting. So could you briefly say when will, let's answer this question just for Algorithm, how will Algorithm define effectiveness, and how will it know that it's effective?
I think that's a great question, and I think I'm going to have to help to figure out the answer to that. But I think that essentially, if we see that a substantial number, and we'll have to define that, of small and mid-size NGOs are beginning to reach scale, beginning to build and help more people more effectively, and that you're seeing them continuously improve, that they're learning and adapting. Because that is, I should have said that before, the critical thing here is not that you have gangbuster outcomes. The critical thing we're looking for is, are you learning and adapting? And we want to see evidence of learning and adapting. So are you improving over time? I think that will be the defining test of whether or not.
So then your theory of change really is that the learning and adapting coming from the facilitated measurement leads to growth in terms of both donors who are attracted to it, as well as people who are served by it.
And the quality of the service.
And the quality of the service, yeah. So last question, particularly in algorithm, as a young company, social enterprise in the social sector with that particular mission, what is, and this is an unfair question really to ask you, but let me try it anyway.
7 years as a charity navigator, I'm used to unfair questions. Go ahead.
Okay, there I go. What leadership skills, since you are a leader in this very, what sounds like from the other interview that I encourage viewers to watch, which is the interview with you on career advice, what kind of leadership skills do you think you need to have in this type of social enterprise with that mission to be an effective leader?
I would say bridging the gap between that divide between NGOs and social enterprise is a big one. To convince both sides that we are on the same side, that we are part of a patchwork quilt. It's not either or. I think that's going to be important. And then also to convince the small and mid-sized organizations that their reflexive and logical reaction to abandon all hope because it's impossible, that there really is a way out.
To measure, you mean?
To measure, and to measure what matters most to meet your mission.
Yeah.
And that, I think that those are going to be some of the biggest challenges. And then, learning how you balance social mission and profit. I think there will always be a tension there. And I think it's the integrity of the leadership, the unmeasurable thing of leadership that will drive whether or not someone can find that balance or not. And I think it's a learning over time.
So that's both integrity and probably also really a strong mission focus, right, for you as an individual leader. It's been great to interview you. Thank you.
My pleasure.